Hey, what's going on, guys? Pete here with MixBetterNow.com, continuing in the Mix 101 series. In the first video, we took a look at how to use an LA2A style compressor, and in this video, I want to show you how to use an 1176. So let's jump on in and check it out. All right, so I have two different instances of the 1176 up on the screen here in our session in Studio One. We're gonna stick with the same mix here, the same song throughout this series, okay? This is The Limit from Matt McKelkin, mattmckelkin.com. I will put a link in the show notes. But anyhow, what we're looking at is two different versions, if you will. The top one is what I would call a blackface, and the bottom one is what's commonly known as a silver face or a blue stripe. I don't want to talk about all the different models and the nuances because that's not really important right now. I just want to show you the meat and potatoes of how we use the features on here to dial in our compression, and then also what we will use it on. So if we take a look at the interface, we're going to see a couple more knobs, a couple more things than we saw on the LA2A. So going from left to right, we have an input knob, we have an output knob, we have an attack and a release knob, and then we have our ratios over here, our VU meter, and then we have our actual meter section where we can sort of show what the meter is telling us, just like with the LA2A, how we could set the the output or the gain reduction. We can do the same thing here with this guy. So GR is gain reduction. I always leave that on because I want to see how much compression I'm doing. Some of my favorite things to use this compressor on are drums, vocals, bass guitar. I personally find that I can use this on a lot more things than an LA2A just because we have a lot more control over the attack and release times. This is a FET style compressor. It uses a FET transistor in the circuit to do its thing. I don't want to get into the different types of compression right now, but we will assess that in a future video, okay? What I want to do is let's just hit play. Let's listen to what they're doing, and you could also look at the metering here just to see how they're reacting. This is on the lead vocal track. So this black face up here is actually on the lead vocal track. It's right here. And then the blue stripe is actually in parallel. So I'm using this for parallel compression, and I have this set up on a parallel bus over here in pink. So we're going to go from the first verse into the first chorus, and let's take a listen.
Questions fired out of the cannon. You're hiding behind a smile. I haven't got a chance to answer before my words turned around. It's getting hard to remember now. The more I say, the less I know. You mutter as you walk away. That's what I thought you'd say. You can take my heart to the limit. It'll keep me coming back for more. But then you tell me your heart isn't in it. A different story than you saw before.
All right, so as you can see, based upon the VU meters, they're both reacting quite differently. The black face just knocking off some of the peak transient information, and then the blue stripes working pretty hard in parallel, which is how I like to use it. So if we take a look at the controls it has, what makes this different is a couple things, all right? We don't have a gain reduction knob like with the LA2A. And now we have control over our attack time, our release time, and our ratios, okay? So moving from left to right, this is the input knob. And what the input knob does is it essentially controls how much compression we're going to be doing. The harder you drive the input, the more compression we're going to get on the audio source. Output knob. The output knob is just like with the LA2A, okay? So you can basically control where your volume is at. You can use it for makeup gain. If you want to increase the level and drive something harder, you can do that. If you want to reduce the volume, you can use it for all that stuff. Now we have our attack and release knobs. Now, just so you know, with the 1176, this is an inherently fast compressor. What I mean by that is the range of times we have for the attack and release is very fast either way you go. So the fastest attack time is very fast, and then the the slowest release time or attack time, pardon me, is also very fast, and the same with the release. All right, so looking at the attack and release knobs, they are a little bit backwards from most compressors, right? If we have the attack set to 1, this is the slowest. And if we move it all the way to 7, it's going to be the fastest on both of them, on the attack and the release. So it's a little bit confusing because a lot of people might look at this and they might equate the numbers to the attack and release time. And that's just not how this device works, okay? So it's important to know that 1 is the slowest and 7 is the fastest. So getting that out of the way, that's really how you essentially use this compressor. You can pick your ratio on these particular ones. It's a 4-to-1, an 8-to-1, a 12-to-1, and a 20-to-1. So typically for compression, you would use a 4-to-1 or an 8-to-1. And then to get more into limiting, you would maybe use a 12-to-1. And then for full-on limiting, you would use a 20-to-1. As I showed you before, this is on my vocals, and I just love the way that they sound. I love using these on parallel compression. I'll use them for parallel compression on my drums, on my vocals, even on my bass. So something I thought would be fun to do is, since we're in the middle of mixing this, let's go ahead and check out these harmony vocals over here. So during the chorus, we have Aaron singing sort of a little harmony part. It sounds like this. We'll go from the second chorus, and let's take a listen.
Take my heart to the limit. It'll keep me coming back for more. Tell me your heart isn't in it. Different story than you saw before. I know you know the difference between the colors and the sound, but I can't take it off it. Not every heaven can wait.
So essentially what I'm doing here is I have his harmony panned hard left.
Take my heart to the limit.
And then I duplicated it, panned the other one hard right.
Take my heart to the limit.
So we're sending both of these to a bus because I want to process them all as one thing. So what I've already gone ahead and done is I've done a little bit of EQing. The purpose of this video is not EQing. I want to show you how I would dial in an 1176. So I've gone ahead, done a little bit of subtractive EQ, a little bit of additive EQ. Now I want to add an 1176 on here. So I'm going to grab a blackface. And it doesn't really matter. That's not really the point as to which one I'm going to use. I'm just going to, all I'm doing is grabbing a compressor that I like the sound of. So let's check it out, right? So we've got this soloed up.
Take my heart to the limit. It'll keep me coming back for more.
So as you can see, here's where it defaults to. This is the UAD 1176. I like this one. I also use the CLA 76, but to me, the audio quality of the CLA 76 is a bit more aggressive. It's not better or worse. It's just different. To me, the UAD ones sound the most like the analog units. So as you can see, it defaults to around 4 here, and it sort of defaults to around 5 on the release time, okay? So what I want to do is I want to sort of get this vocal part under control. I want to use the 1176 to kind of peg back some of the transients, okay? So if we sort of drive the input, that's kind of how we're going to get the amount of compression that we're going to do. And then, okay, attack and release times. Remember, 1 is the slowest and 7 is the fastest. So a starting point for me will be like a 4 and 4. And that's a good starting point if you don't know how to use an 1176 or if you're not familiar with it. Think of the 4-4-4 rule, and essentially what that means is 4-to-1 ratio, 4 on the attack and 4 on the release. It's pretty up the middle that way. It's the lowest ratio possible, and it'll sort of give you a starting point, and then you can tweak and figure out, do I want a faster attack or a slower attack, and release. So let's take a listen.
Take my heart to the limit. It'll keep me coming back for more.
So that's already doing about 10 dB of compression, and that's too much for me. I don't want to squish it that hard, so we're going to back off on the input.
Take my heart to the limit. It'll keep me coming back for more.
Okay, I know that I typically like a specific attack and release time on my vocals with an 1176, so my attack is usually around 3, and I usually set the release to around 6 or 7. So let's try that.
Take my heart to the limit. It'll keep me coming back for more.
So as you can see there, when his vocal gets a little bit louder, it's just pegging back some of the louder words, some of the transients. So what that's doing is it's taking the louder parts and it's making them a little bit quieter, and then it's taking the quieter parts and it's making them a little bit louder, and then everything in between here is where the audio is going to live. Now, if I exaggerate this, watch how much compression we get by increasing the input.
Take my heart to the limit. It'll keep me coming back for more. Tell me your heart isn't in it. Different story than you sold before.
So that's a lot. You know, that's something I might, a setting I might go for on something in parallel that I'm blending in with it. But I just only want to knock off a couple dB, all right? So I'm going to actually go with the fastest release possible, and let's just kind of aim to knock off a couple dB on the vocal.
Take my heart to the limit. It'll keep me coming back for more. Tell me your heart isn't in it. Different story than you sold before. I know you know the difference between the colors and the sound.
So I like where that's at. It's still on the transparent side of things, and it's controlling the vocal. Let's listen in context.
Take my heart to the limit. It'll keep me coming back for more. But then you tell me your heart isn't in it. A different story than you sold before. I know you know the difference between the colors and the sound. But I can't take it on faith. Not every heaven can wait. Let's be done with this messing around.
Cool, so I love where that's at, and for me that's a great starting point on my compression using this particular 1176 on the vocal. All right, so the last thing I want to show you is how this sounds and reacts on drums, because, you know, I would say an 1176 on the drums is one of the more classic sounds in rock music, and I guarantee you've heard this on so many of your favorite records. So I am using the 1176 here on the drum bus, and I'm also using it again for a little bit of parallel compression on the snare. So I have a kick crush, a snare crush bus, and then a drum crush parallel compression bus. If you look at what it's doing to the snare, I'm using a higher ratio. Okay, let's solo up the drums, go from a verse. So it's pretty aggressive. You know, we're doing about 7 dB of compression. Slowest attack possible, we're on 1. Fastest release possible on 7. That's often how I'll dial in my parallel compression. But what I want to take a look at is how this will react and sound on the drum bus. So again, we have the UAD 1176, and then I also want to show you another popular one, great sounding one, which is the Waves CLA 76. All right. Right now I have the UAD one on, and these both work the same. All right. So if we look at the Waves version, there's pretty much no difference. You can toggle back and forth between the black face and the blue stripe. Down at the bottom on the UAD, you have to physically put another one in. But let's listen to both of them and just sort of see how the VU meter reacts to the transients when we're compressing. This blue button up here means that the compressor or the plugin is on. So when it's dark like this, it means it's off, just so you know that. Let's listen. Okay, I'm going to turn the compressor off. On. So So a couple of the things that I'm hearing that 1176s are famous for is the sustain that you will get on your snare drum. It brings out this lovely movement for the snare, and it allows it to sort of sound like it's sustaining quite a bit, okay? Compression is very much about controlling your dynamics, controlling volume, but compression is also very much movement-based. So the reason being is that it's moving the whole time. The compressor's constantly moving when it's compressing, all right? So, movement and volume for me are big parts of compression. I have this set to 3 on the attack, so it's not as slow as possible, but I definitely have the fastest release time. Listen to how different this will sound when I change the release time. I'm going to drive the input a little bit harder here. I hope you can hear how when the release is slower, it's not letting go of the transient information, so it actually makes it sound smaller and quite a bit more squished. Now, the inverse of that is when it's very fast like that, it can pump a little bit. Pumping's okay if it's what you want and it sounds appropriate, but we can certainly do this with the 1176. All right, let's just check out what this sounds like with the CLA 76. Same controls: input, output, attack time, release time. Here are our ratios. Let's really exaggerate this and drive it hard by turning the input up. Let's go back to where we had it. So again, it sounds very similar to the UAD. For me, this is just a little bit more grabby, and when I say grabby, I mean it sort of attacks the transients a little bit harder, a little bit faster. It's just the nature of the algorithm, and it's sort of how the plugin sounds. One's not better, or one's not worse. It's just, they're kind of doing their own thing. So that's really essentially the nuts and bolts of an 1176. All right, there's a little bit more stuff going on, but nothing too confusing, right? We have our input that we drive to increase our compression amount, which is going to essentially lower our threshold. We have our output here, so we can level match volume-wise. We can also increase our volume if we want, or lower our volume. Attack time, release time, ratios. Remember, 1 is the slowest for both, 7 is the fastest for both, and our ratios are over here. I stick to 4 and 8 when I'm compressing, 12 or 20 if I'm trying to limit, and I'll do 12 or 20 if I'm using it in parallel on something. So love these on vocals, drums, bass, even some guitars. They sound awesome. All right, so that's it for me. My name is Pete with MixBetterNow.com. This has been how to use an 1176 in my Mix 101 series. If you guys dug this video, please do me a favor and hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. And if you're not on the email list, click on the link in the show notes below. When you subscribe to my email list, I will send you my free audio swag bag, which is full of all kinds of goodies like free multi-track sessions, free mix templates, free drum samples, and there's a bunch of other cool stuff. So thank you guys for your time. Thank you for watching. I hope you all have an awesome day, and I will catch you next time.